Recording to start.
There we go.
Welcome everyone to another Friday Trust Engine Mastermind. I am the co-founder of the Trust Engine Group, where Dave Savage and I, for about 7 years, have been coming on every Friday and hosting this conversation. And the last couple of years, we've been super fortunate to be joined by another co-host, none other than Deborah Bird, who is on vacation in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and having internet trouble. So her face just disappeared. So I will just take it away from here. We're super excited. We've got a friend that Deborah and I met through Phil Jones. So a lot of you know that Deborah and I have recently become exactly what to say guides. And a lot of you know, because a lot of you are signed up for our first ever specifically for mortgage and real estate, exactly what to say certifications that she and I'll be running in September and October, one in Phoenix and one in Dallas. We are over halfway full, so we've got a handful of spots if that left for each event. So if it's something you're interested in, or you would be interested in really figuring out how to create better conversations with your friends, family, loved ones, as well as those that you want to do business with, clients and real estate agents, it would be a great opportunity for you to join us. And the reason that we are here today is to welcome our friend, Kevin Boyle. Welcome, Kevin. How are you doing?
Good, Todd. How are you?
I'm doing good. So I don't want to get your, you got one of these long, fancy bios. But what I would say is what I'm going to give my intro from the heart, and then I'll let you kind of figure it out. But actually, I'll read part of it. Kevin's a real estate advisor, speaker, and coach. And so he really loves just helping other people become more of what they're looking for. And he just loves to be in front of people. He's a funny guy, a fun guy. And someone I'm excited to learn more about today as we have this conversation. And so I think we titled this something about building real estate agent relationships. Was that our fancy title we picked?
Yeah, to how to elevate relationships with real estate agents.
Perfect. All right. So I totally botched that. I didn't give Kevin the intro he deserved, but that was Deborah's job before we lost her here on Zoom. But I think ultimately what you all should know is that, Deborah and I, as we were planning for this conversation, we're like, who can we bring into the community after having Phil Jones here for Scriptapalooza, doing a follow-up with them that would really help us take it to the next step. And so the fact that you are on the real estate side, that you're a coach and also a guide, I think is a great conversation. So how do you want to kick it off and get started?
Well, I mean, I think kind of giving some background. So I'm a COVID pivot in real estate. So that's kind of how I was in a consulting business, marketing, an events-based business all the way up into COVID. Obviously, that went away really quickly, but a lot of what my life was about was relationships with vendors, right? Partnering with vendors and having clear, transparent communications with the people that were helping me collaborate to get projects done, to move things forward, to produce events. And so as I moved into the real estate space and saw a lot of really early success, and then moving into exactly what to say, I've just worked to try to elevate how I collaborate and build relationships with other people. And now in the real estate space, having people, as I call them, in my corner to be able to help facilitate, deals and lead conversions. And that one of the biggest pillars of that is my lending partners. And so it's something that I work on daily, weekly, working with my the LOs that I know, the banks that I work with, and having those really strong relationships have really helped me to build my business. We lost you. I think you're muted there.
Deborah
Sorry.
is back, or is she frozen again?
I think she's back. Oh, no, frozen.
No, she is frozen. I love that. And I think it's such an interesting thing. I talk to, dozens of loan officers a week, and even, more than that in real estate agents. And I love the fact that, a couple things. Number one, that you're a pivot in COVID, right? I remember that you were, had a different career before, but I think anytime someone comes from a different profession where you've built a reputation in the good business, and then you pivot to real estate, I think you bring a different level of expertise and professionalism to it, which is great. And then what I tend to find though when I talk to loan officers is the number one thing they want is more realtor relationships, or maybe just better realtor relationships. And I talk to realtors who transparently don't appreciate their lender relationships like you do. So So I love hearing that, that's something that's important to you.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I try to do very early on with new contacts and as I meet people is really trying to find out the reasons why they do what they do, right? I think there's a lot of really wonderful loan officers and professionals in the industry that have great stories to tell behind the scenes, right? And that's the way that I try to connect with people, is genuinely finding out why they do what they do, right? They can tell me rates, they can go through all these different products and buy downs and that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, I want to know what makes my contacts tick. I want to be able to know, what are their, we were talking about before we came on about Legos, and we're talking about what we do with our kids. Like, those are the things that help build foundations of relationships, because you start to create that kind of empathy and certainty with the other person. And so that's really one of my focuses, is that I think what you want to be able to do is have a two-way collaborative relationship, and they need to know where you're coming from. You need to know where they're coming from. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, it's so difficult to do something that should be so easy, which is understand how to engage and connect. And, for me, that was what drew me to exactly what to say, right? This whole idea to have these different just small phrases that you can use
Right.
in order to deepen a conversation.
Well, and it's self-talk too, right? Like, I think one of the things that exactly what to say and that communication track works really well is you need to, as a loan officer, somebody in this industry, start asking yourself some questions, right? Could it be possible that I'm not connecting with agents in the right way? Could it be possible that some of the methods that I'm using to try to incentivize, conversations is not effective, right? So getting into those kinds of conversations with yourself, instead of thinking like, oh, like, I wish I had more relationships, I wish I had better contacts. It's like, well, sometimes you just got to come back to zero and say, what could I be doing better? And that comes back to knowing what you already know, is that some of the shortcuts and some of the quick conversations that you're having that are really superficial and surface based aren't the things that are driving those relationships and those memorable moments, because we're in the same space. We have thousands of people just like us that we're competing against. So what are you doing to stand out? And I think you really have to ask yourself that question, and exactly what to say is a good way to have that. You need to be curious with yourself too about what you're doing.
Yeah, I think curiosity is something that, I always loved it. In your bio, you talk about trying not to be the smartest person in the room. And, I really found myself as I was trying to grow as a loan officer that I felt that I had to be the smartest person in the room, and that I had to show that I was the smartest person in the room. And so I
Yeah.
love that you point out that that's not your goal.
Well, and also too, look, smart agents right now, smart real estate agents that are doing business are the ones that are grinding and focusing on the things that they can control. One of the things that we can't control is what's going on in the market. There's no way that as an agent, you can both handle your business and stay on top of the market the way that an LO can. So stop being the smartest person in the room and start collaborating with a good loan officer. And so as the LO office needs to listen, is that you need to be the go-to person for your agents to be the smartest person in the room when it comes to the market. When I have people come through and they ask me, which is 90% of the people, what's the market doing? My answer is not this long-winded Jerome Powell, this is what the Fed's doing, this is anything like that. That's not me, right? But my question is, would it be helpful if I could put you in contact with a trusted lender that I work with who can maybe explain better what the market is doing right now? And now what I do as a follow-up, because I have the relationship with those loan officers, is to be able to say, now listen, if you are really interested, he's a 3-ring pickup and I'm giving you his cell phone. So you have to be ready to talk. And I know that the person that I have as a contact is going to be a 3-ring pickup, because I will text them. You're going to get a call from a Cincinnati number. They're going to want to talk about the market. I don't want it to be salesy. I don't want it to be long-winded. I want it to be information-based, and I want it to be helpful. And because more often than not, people are like, yeah, I'd love to talk to a banker, right? And so I hand those people off, and then those people come back, and it's a pretty good success rate. If they're going to do something from a financing standpoint, they end up using the person that was my go-to person that I put them in contact with. So it's important that how many, I mean, I guess the question is how many agents do you have that relationship with? How many agents are you going to and saying, listen, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Send them to me. As soon as they ask about the market, I've got a one sheeter. I update it daily. I can tell them exactly what's happening. Right. And that's a really important part of my business. And honestly, it's one of the reasons why, even during this kind of challenging rate market, I'm still getting people that are going into financing because I'm putting them in front of people that can say, listen, these are your options.
All right. And so there's two things that you said that I picked up on. One I'm crystal clear on and I loved, which was they're a 3-ring pickup. And then the other, you just said one sheeter. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah. So,
all right. What's a one
the way
sheeter?
that I see it, so the way that I see it is that I just like, we have hot sheets and as real estate agents, right? So we check the market every single day based on the areas that we're looking at. So I'm assuming that when LOs wake up in the morning, that they are looking at what the market is doing. And so for me, it's what is the information they have in front of you that's updating daily. I say a one sheeter, I just assume that there's a piece of paper they can say it, but what is happening in the market right now and what information can they give when they're asked. So just having real-time data and real-time information is really key.
Yeah, what great coaching. I mean, just I think that most of the time we know that the worst time to think about what you're going to say is at the time you're saying it. And I think that most time loan officers fly by the seat of their pants because they're pretty good at it. But I always just say, gosh, could you be a little bit better if you were just a little more prepared?
Well, we talk about critical conversations, right? These are situational moments that happen on repeat where the competence you bring to them has a direct impact on your overall success, right? If you're a loan officer and you get blindsided every day when somebody says what the market's doing, you're definitely not prepared and you're definitely not coming into it thinking, I know what I'm going to say before I say it. These are things that are happening all the time, when they happen. And how important is it that you show up with a good answer and information has a compounding effect on your success. So making sure that you're ready to answer that question and know that it's not your client that's calling, right? It's our client. You're collaborating with the agent. So how you do in that moment has a direct impact on how that client sees me as well. So it's that Uncle Ben moment with, great power comes great responsibility. If you're going to get handed off a client from an agent to you, you need to be ready to be able to put your best foot forward, to have thoughtful responses. And there are people that I don't work with because I know that they don't think about what they're going to say before they say it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So when a loan officer approaches you, I think loan officers struggle with what would a real estate agent who doesn't know them that well or at all, what would they need to say in order to keep the conversation going? Meaning, yeah, thanks for calling, no thanks, click. What do you suggest? I mean, what are the loan officers who you work with? How do they approach you, and how do they add value? And what suggestions would you make to the folks watching?
So I'll go backwards first. So the people that I work with, we have a cadence. We know exactly how each other work, right? So if I shoot that text that says, listen, Boca Raton number is going to call. This is an FHA. Looking in this zip code, we've identified some homes they want to know about PMI, right? Boom, boom, boom. Send them over. That text goes out immediately. And then I just make sure that they follow up, right? So we have that cadence. But what I would say to loan officers that are approaching agents is simply say, help me understand how I can facilitate more business for you, right? Not, can I get you on my email list? It's not that episode of The Office with the basket of gifts with the turtles, right? That's not what's getting it done. It's, how can I be a resource for you on a daily or a weekly basis? Now, the loan officers that I work with also send me weekly updates of what the rates are doing. So Fridays are my favorite day because I get to I tell people, hey, listen, this is what Brian said about rates. This is what Jordan said about rates. We have information that we can work with. But just going up to agents and saying, look, help me understand what I can do to be a resource for you. And there are going to be agents that are going to be all data driven. They're going to be agents that just want to know, what products and services that the bank offers or the lending institution offers, but just putting themselves in that position to say, you tell me what you need and what can I do to help facilitate that.
Oh, so the rate sheet, the rate information that comes to you, you find valuable. So I think we all love to hear that. How are they
Yeah,
sending that to you? Is it just a thing that says, "Hey, here's FHA rates, here's
that's
VA
it.
rates"? Are they sending it
Yeah,
in an
nothing
email? Are they
else.
doing a video?
It's not like, so there's a couple that I get that remind me of those recipes when you're like, oh, I just need to know how to make a bagel. And then there's like the life story of the recipe poster, like this much. And then the recipe is this much, like just all this. Like, I don't need to know like how your, grandmother made bagels. I just need to know like how to make bagels. So like the most effective emails are just like, here's the rates right at the top of the email. This is what you get. Contact me if you have any more questions. So succinct, easily accessible, easily digestible information that's sent on a consistent basis is what I look for. And I think that's what's super helpful.
So are you then? I think loan officers get scared because they're like, well, then then they're going to shop me. If I send them that, they're going to go to XYZ website and see if my rate is higher or lower than theirs. I mean, how would you encourage a loan officer to start providing that type of data without having that fear?
Yeah. So I think part of it is that's why the relationship is important, right? So when I look at like say my 2 or 3 go-to lenders, I know where they kind of fall in terms of fees and one's a portfolio lender, one's more of a traditional underwriter, that type of stuff. So like that's when the agent starts to go to bat for the loan officer. So, hey, listen, this guy Brian is my go-to. He's awesome. I can tell you his service is unparalleled. I would definitely have a conversation with him if you're interested. And then that way it's like, you start to create some context around the content, right? Rates are rates, but like we've all been in that position where we've gotten terrible customer service. We felt like we've got the runaround. We get hit with hidden fees. We get hit with all that type of stuff. So I think that's why it's so important to really connect with your agent as you as you develop the relationship, so they can go to bat for you and make you stand out amongst all of the the sea of rate people putting that stuff out there.
Yeah, I think it's I love hearing you say that because I've always been one who's been more like, hey, send a quick video update. And then you're saying the opposite. So I think it's great to have a different perspective.
Yeah, and you can do all that type of stuff too. I mean, I think you can. I mean, that's more like a Wednesday email, right? Or a Thursday LinkedIn post or something like that. But like at the end of the day, there needs to be some solid substance that's actionable data that, that keeps the agent informed. Because we look at, you get the news update or you get, you read the article and it says the rates go up. Well, then Friday comes around and I see that, maybe it's a butterfly flapping its wings, but right now you could lock in something that's probably still reasonable. So I think that's why that data is really important.
Yeah, I always worry about the butterflies flapping their
Yeah,
wings.
exactly.
Um, so I mean, I love it. So you're kind of building it out, right? So you would love something midweek that's more of the story about grandma and how she came up with the bagel recipe.
Yeah.
You just really want the recipe on Fridays. What anything else that you think on a common cadence, whether it's weekly, monthly, that you think would be helpful for loan officers to provide to the real estate agent partners?
Yeah, I think having an education space, right? Having some sort of training space that allows people to interact with you. These types of Zooms, those types of situations where you can have these kind of open meetings to allow people come in and ask questions. I think that's huge. It shows two things. It shows that you're active and trying to develop both your profession side of things and your branding, but also to be open to the fact that, this is what I know, this is what I'm finding out. Here's a new product that we have. Here's somebody that we've worked with. Here's a testimonial, whatever it is. Put yourself in a position where people can see you putting out information on a like more of a real time basis, as opposed to maybe something that's AI written or a little bit more canned.
Yeah, AI written in canned. I do feel oftentimes that we see a lot of folks in our industry doing the same thing. And I think that there's a great way to swipe and adapt. And I think there's other ways where it comes across as just swiped.
Yeah. Well, also too, I think another important thing that loan officers need to consider is, I'm a big proponent of eliminating finish lines. I don't like milestones. I don't like, goals are fine, but I don't like this finite approach that happens, especially with real estate transactions. It's a lot of people in real estate view the closing table as the finish line. My finish line doesn't even exist there, right? We're talking about a long game, long relationships, opportunities, that type of things, those types of things down the road. So a challenge to loan officers is, where do you see your finish line with your agents? Or do you create these kind of stops where you end communication, where it's like, listen, we got a deal done, I'll check back with them in a couple of months. Like, what are you doing to kind of keep that relationship going and keeping those opportunities going? Because really what you're doing is wanting to get not only additional business from the agent, but you want to get a referral business from the client, all that type of stuff. So I think that's a big thing too, that sometimes it's like, okay, I did a deal with you and I haven't heard from you in 6 months, like, what else can you do to be having meaningful conversations after the deal is done?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, one of the things that I was known for in this community, where Dave Savage, who's my co-founder here, would interview me before we founded this community, was around annual mortgage reviews and that ongoing conversation. And I know our community talks about it a lot, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't know that they act on it as much as they say they do or should. So a little nudge in the side to those of you who aren't keeping in touch with their clients. But what would you say then? What would you like your loan officer partners to do, and how would you encourage them to do it from both the client perspective, what you would like to see them do going forward with your mutual clients, as well as what kind of communication would be valuable to you on an ongoing basis?
I think the ongoing communication is just like checking in to see what their business is doing, right? What do you have in the pipeline? What do you have coming up? Who are people that I can contact and maybe talk to? Because some, agents get busy too, right? So we're not always on top of pushing our clients to lenders and that type of stuff. So sometimes it's like, if you can dip in and say, what kind of business do you have kind of teed up? Do you have, any listings coming up? What do you have that we can be helpful to maybe for open houses? Look, I saw you have an open house. Just continue to have the conversation. Like, the deal's done, congratulations. And then what are you doing next, right? What happens next is, well, who's this other person you have lined up? What other deals do you have ready? And even just as simple as like, hey, do you want to go grab coffee and talk about what went well and what didn't go well, right? Because that there's going to be things that there's always going to be blame, tax returns, whatever, things like that. There's always those obstacles. But, I'm a big believer in the post-game interview. I like the idea of talking about what went well, what didn't go well. I'm big on giving critical feedback. Like, listen, I know that, I did get this feedback from them mid-deal. Like, it would be helpful if you did this better. I have no problem saying that type of stuff. And so I think ask for that critical feedback too. Like, hey, what could we have done better in that deal? Instead of just sending me a survey monkey, like, go take them to coffee or put them in a position where you can really find out face to face or over the phone how that could have gone better.
Yeah, I think a lot of loan officers in this community are good at updating listing agents through the transaction, and they view the listing agent as that's an easy way for them to build rapport. They know the listing agent wants to talk to them at the beginning. They know that they're going to answer their phone during it for the updates, but I think then they get intimidated at the end to ask for that coffee meeting and the feedback. What would be your suggestion? Do you have a conversation starter or something that you think they could say in order to try to get that meeting to happen in person at a coffee shop?
Yeah, I think just asking, would you be open-minded to having a conversation about how that deal went? I'd just like to know what went well and what could have gone better. And then put some time on it, right? Listen, I just want to sit down for 30 minutes. Are you available at 10:15 Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning, right? So it doesn't feel like it's this long-winded thing, but that check-in can be helpful. And I can tell you why it's helpful, because I've had instances where I've had to give that critical feedback. That's been helpful to hear, where sometimes you have processors that are working underneath you, that's part of your system, and you don't realize that maybe that soft touch that you want them to have doesn't exist, right? So I've given that kind of feedback before, where it's like, the main LO wants this to be a positive soft touch transaction. Well, it's like, well, there's somebody named Tracy in your office that's sending really terse, succinct emails that have no soft touch to them, and they're going to everybody on the transaction. So, I think it's like, giving that little feedback is it's helpful for the LO, for Tracy, for everybody involved. But the goal is, like, I'm just trying to make it better as in terms of the next transaction. Like, that's why the finish line is so important to get rid of. Is it's not about this transaction. What if I told you it was about the next 5 transactions we do, and then we can talk about a finish line and going back and looking at what went well and what didn't go well.
So I don't know if you're a lot like me, you're thinking, wow, Kevin makes this sound so easy. And so what I would encourage you to do, Paul threw a link in here to some of the exactly what to say resources from Scriptapalooza, and then what Deborah and I have upcoming. That's literally what we're going to do, is spend 2 days having conversations like this around what you can say in order to get meetings, in order to be more effective with your clients and in other situations. I also, Kevin, had us throw in your link to your guide page over at exactly what to say. So what would be a good reason for someone to want to reach out to you? What would you hope for them to think about after this?
Yeah, so I think, one of my strengths that I try to teach other people, and a lot of what I do with my coaching with like new agents and people inside and outside of this industry, is talking about managing expectations, using exactly what to say to better your internal and external communication. Because really, when it comes down to it, we're not, especially using exactly what to say, this isn't some professional development that only works in this little box here, right? We're talking about a linear communication track that works across every aspect of your life, personally and professionally. And one thing that I think that people need to do better at is talking to themselves better, like kind of hyping yourself up, right? And then managing your expectations. And the first part of it is I try to coach people about the pre-game halftime adjustment speech and the post-game interview. You need to work on your self-talk. Like how did that conversation go? Have a conversation with yourself in your car. I do it all the time, doing interviews with yourself. Like, I met that agent. They seem really nice. I think I talked too long about my dog. Maybe I shouldn't talk about my dog as much next time. They seem interested in this. Maybe I follow up with them on this. And you start processing stuff a lot better. And you start putting yourself in a position of just knowing how you want to approach conversations based off of what you see is working and what's not working. And I also think when we talk about how you're approaching agents, is manage your expectations. Like, what are you wanting to get out of these interactions, right? And what do you expect to happen? Because a lot of times we put ourselves in this position of saying, you've got to be kidding me. Like they went with somebody else. It's like, if you find yourself saying, you've got to be kidding me, it's probably your fault. Like you didn't manage your expectation of how that went or how that could have gone. So starting to really think critically about how you're managing your expectations, how you're looking at your levels of success. And those are things that I really try to help people with. And it takes a ton of burden and ton of stress off of your marketing, off of you personally. And it helps you grow your business because you know that there's a whole plethora of ways that this can go, but I'm going to work really hard to try to go in my favor, but knowing that it's not going to be perfect.
You talk about this inner talk, and it's when I feel like a fool. I'm like, oh, I was thinking about all the ways I can use this externally, but I do feel like our own self-talk is one of our biggest challenges right now because of the market, and because we're just kind of feeling stuck. A lot of people I talk to.
Well, I was telling somebody this the other day, who is a newer agent. She's about a year in, and she's super discouraged about a lot of things that are going on. Even though she has a bunch of tiny victories, right? She has a bunch of wins under her belt, having been in the industry for a year, having survived it for a year, right? So one of the things that I've told her is, what are you doing to kind of find those victories? What are you trying to do to have those positive conversations with yourself? For me, for a long time before I interacted with exactly what to say and started focusing on it for internal talk, I was a very jaded person. I found more pessimism than optimism. In the industries that we're in, it's very helpful to find the optimism before you find the pessimism, to have hope instead of being jaded. And so I link a lot of my success, early success in real estate and what I'm doing now in the coaching and speaking space, to the fact that I'm a more optimistic person, that I'm able to handle those negative situations by managing expectations and having that better self-talk. And so I think that's something that's really important for you. I mean, it's fine to talk about what your emails look like, how your communication is and that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, how are you processing information? Like, how are you talking to yourself about what went well, what didn't go well? Do you go home and say, I did everything I could possibly do today to be better? And if you can't answer those kinds of questions, I think that's where you start.
Yeah, I just love that. Look for little victories. And it's funny that you say that because my love language traditionally has been sarcasm. And I know that sarcasm doesn't translate well.
That's
And
good.
I
I'll
often
remember that in
use
the book.
sarcasm when I'm feeling negative. And I would say that as you were saying that, it made me think that there's so many times just in the past few days where I was going to say something sarcastic and I bit my tongue
Yeah,
because I'm thinking differently about what I say. And I think that just in itself is probably the biggest victory, is that I'm thinking ahead of time. And then I think certainly the second part is now I've got these different tools and phrases that I'm able to use in order to have a different type of conversation, with folks. Is that something you find as well? It sounds a little bit like that with your negativity to
100.
positivity.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a brilliant speaker and author named Sylvie DeGusto, and she talks about the subconscious bias, right? So when we talk about how you're marketing yourself to real estate agents and how you're interacting with our industry, I think she talked about, I'm terrible at numbers, but she talks about how there's like 40 like kind of makers in your brain that are like conscious biases that are happening in your brain. And then subconscious, there's like 40 million. And what we focus on in a lot of our marketing is trying to hit those 40 conscious, where we don't realize that there's this whole other behind the scenes of our brain that really feeds into, everything from your energy to your optimism to, just anything and everything. So what are you doing to try to tap in and trigger those subconscious biases to connect with people? If you're a more pessimistic person than you're optimistic, you're setting yourself up to be running into obstacles that you don't need to have. You need to do the same thing when you're talking about being curious. If you ask the question, would it be helpful if it's a lot better than if you just said, you need to do this, right? I'm going to tell you what to do. So start from a place of optimism, curiosity, and empathy. And I think that's where you're going to hit into those kinds of, those subconscious barriers.
Do you have any resources that you use yourself on a frequent basis for positive content or to put yourself in a positive mindset?
Ooh, man, that's a great question. I think for me, it's a lot of like, so for me, it's a mindset thing. So it's really all about music. So I try to give myself that kind of space to think and process and like kind of I listen to everything from the interstellar stuff, depending on how my day goes. If my day is going really well, and I'll probably listen to something like Tame Impala or something like that. But if my day's a little challenging, it might be more Interstellar, the Cornfield Chase, or something that's a little bit more dramatic. But that's usually how I try to put myself in that mindset. And then just listen to some really great personal development books, right? I mean, Sylvie's got a great book. I listen to Exactly What to Say all the time. I think it's just really more just asking yourself, could it be possible I could have a different approach to how I feel about this situation, and start talking to yourself through it.
I love it. And for me, it's similar stuff, positive content, but I think it's even more so that I'm eliminating the negative content, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't watch the news. I don't buy into the arguments on social media. Deborah's not here, so I could say I don't go on social media very much, so that I don't get in trouble about that. That's actually why I've hired Plug and Play SM, Deborah's company, to do all of my social media.
Right.
And again, I may get some hate for this, but I've also unfriended the people who want to sit there and argue. It's the interesting thing is I've got friends that are have similar beliefs to me, and I've got a lot of friends that I'm 100% certain have the opposite of beliefs to me. They're just not the ones that are on social media screaming about it. And so I'm friends with people of all beliefs. However, if they're going to scream about their belief and not only primarily in the way of that theirs is the only belief, not open to curiosity about the other side, then I just block that out. And so I think that's one of the other things I'd encourage you all to do is just really look at what are you bringing in, and I think the other part then is who are the negative people in your life. Do you have any great tips for how to take someone who's showing up in your world? It sounds like you talked about the newer agent and you encouraged her around little victories. Is there any other tips you would have to get someone to turn someone around who's in a negative mindset that's in their immediate vicinity?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is like, what are you doing to actually move out of that mindset? I think a lot of the times we find ourselves chugging the Pepsi, right? As opposed to trying to eat the salad. Because like we get that 30 seconds of like, yeah, that was a great idea. And then like a whole day's worth of why did I chug that Pepsi? But the chug the Pepsi is scrolling through social media, it's watching the news, it's like, distracting yourself from work. It's like, or gossiping, right? Getting into that negative, sarcastic mindset and, oh, the market's terrible. It's never going to be good. I'm dead, whatever. Like you can't go into that mindset. It's just completely flipping it and start asking yourself, what are the alternative viewpoints to what I'm going through? I had somebody, they were really frustrated. They were about to be fired off of a listing. And I did the exactly what to say trick, which I said, that's great news. And they were like, how is that great news? And I said, well, think of all of the things that you're going to learn from this experience. And they're just like, wow, like what? And I was like, what it feels like to be fired off of a listing. Right? When was the last time you were fired off of a listing? They said, I've never been fired off of a listing. Well, how exciting is it that you're going to find out what it feels like to be fired off of a listing? You can check that box. I did it. I went through it. Now I know I don't ever want to touch that hot stove again. Or if that hot stove starts to get turned on, I know exactly how it's going to feel and I can manage my expectation going into it. And then you can also start figuring out and reverse engineering what went wrong and what you could have done better. Right? Or what are the things that you had no control over? So even in the most challenging situations, you can say, well, what could I have done differently? And how exciting is it for me to have experienced this, to be able to put this in my toolkit and pick and choose what I can do better next time.
Yeah, I love it because now you've said it more than once, right? This whole idea of self-reflection and really that field review, right? That halftime check-in. And I would encourage you all, if you're not doing that, I mean, even on the things that you think went well, the question would be is, hey, what could have made that even better, right? I always love it when I would ask a realtor, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your current lender? And they would always think they could shut me up by saying 10. And I'd say, all right, well, great. What would make them an 11, right? There's no perfect, right? It's always progress, not perfection. And so I think that whole idea of you taking time, right? It's one of the biggest things in Win by Noon that I find that my users don't do as frequently as I think they should do is the daily, the weekly, the monthly, the quarterly review, really, in the longer the review, the deeper the dive, just to ensure that you're actually on track and doing the things that you intended to do when we're all busy.
Well, I mean, would you just go run a half marathon without training? Right. And that's like the same thing that we're doing when we're interacting with each other. Like agents are interacting with LOs and LOs are interacting with agents. What's the training you did before that? Like what's the stamina? What's all that kind of endurance that you've created to be able to go into this conversation and know what you're going to say before you say it, have the intentionality of what exactly you're trying to get out of it. A lot of the times we just like, you know what, I'm going to go to that company meeting 9:00. I'm going to bring croissants and some cold brew and I'll just tell them how the rates are. It's like, we all know how that's going to go. Like you're literally just walking into it with no training, no idea. It's like, you know what, I'm going to research the 5 top agents and the 5 bottom agents in this brokerage. And I'm going to try to connect with at least 2 on each side of that while I'm there. And while I'm there, I'm going to try to have at least 1 follow-up meeting with one of those people that I interact with, right? That's coming with intentionality. That's coming with, and that's literally how this other, an LO also named Kevin pulled me aside at a meeting and was just like, hey, listen, I saw what you did last quarter. I think that's really impressive. Are you open to having coffee next week? I'm like, even though I didn't want to, like, I was like, I don't feel like it. Like in my head, I was like, absolutely. Yeah, let's do it. We sit down now. He's somebody that I have a contact with that I can like at least lean on for some information, but that was his angle. I was the person he targeted at the meeting and we had a conversation. We talked afterwards. So it's like, that's something that you have to be thinking about instead of just going, okay, I'm going to go through the motion. It's like, what are you actually setting yourself up to by reviewing and having your information, your intentionality ready to go into these interactions?
Yeah, I love it, right? So we titled this about leveling up your relationships, but I think that's still the area where people are struggling. I think that was just an easy tip if you really spend a little time ahead of time. And I find that most loan officers, I think this is my perception, so help correct me. I think that most realtors want to say no because they assume that when Kevin approached you at the meeting, that Kevin is expecting you then after that coffee meeting to be like, yeah, you're the best, you're my new loan officer. And I think some loan officers go in there hoping at that meeting they can convert you to be their next referral partner.
Right.
Rome wasn't built in a day. So, how would you coach the loan officer here in that? So number one, you coach them to be intentional. Then how would you coach them to approach that meeting so that they don't come across as, plowing them over and having that person feel like, oh, I'm really disappointed I said yes to that meeting because all they wanted me to do was send them a loan while I was sitting there.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just making sure that you don't approach it from the end game being like what's like get them to do the next transaction with you or send them the next lending client. I think I found myself in some meetings where there's loan officers, and then I think to myself in the meeting, because they're being so salesy and making it seem like this next loan is going to be so easy for my client that I'm wondering who's going to play me in the next Big Short movie. And so in that scene, so I think stepping away from that mentality and really thinking like, okay, so if I'm coming into this with the expectation of going up to one or two of the agents and saying, listen, I just want to be clear, I'm not trying to sell you on anything, but would you be open to sitting down with me? I want to learn more about your business. I would be more open to that conversation than, hey, who do you have that this product works for? Right. So I think that would be the thing. Just keep it nice and simple. Again, one big thing is, hey, can you meet me at 10:15? I just want to have coffee with you for 30 minutes. That's a huge deal. If you can just say, like, we're all about time blocks. And if you can tell me like, this is going to be 30 minutes and you stick to 30 minutes, more agents are going to be more likely to sit down and have coffee with you, or sit down and chat with you at your office, knowing that you're going to respect their time, that we're not going to just sit there awkwardly for 45 minutes and 50 minutes and me just go like, what are we doing here? Really try to set it up where like, I know your time is valuable. Would you be open to sitting down with me, for 30 minutes at Starbucks on Tuesday?
Yeah, I love that. I love it. So, all right, team, we were talking about the game clock earlier, and we're going almost into the fourth quarter. And so, this is a mastermind, and you all have been very quiet today. So, if there's a question that you would like us to ask Kevin, I guess me, since Deborah's not here, to ask Kevin, go ahead and put it in chat. If not, I'm still intrigued, and I've got plenty more. But before we interrupt us with other questions, was there anything else with regards to the conversation and the title that you picked that we haven't gone down that path that you want to make sure we cover?
Yeah, I think just like a quick like reiteration is that what I look for in a loan officer's relationship with me and my business is for them to be a solid collaborative partner in my corner, right? To be a pillar of my business, and knowing that when we get into a transaction, we have open, transparent communication through the challenges and through the positives throughout the process. And the way to do that is to have a really strong relationship on the front end, that it's not transaction based or anything like that. It's like, listen, if you can really get into my corner and I know that you're a resource, and I know everything that's going on with your business and you mine, we're going to have a lot of success together. So that would be my reiteration of how you elevate the relationship.
I love that. And you made it sound like you've got at least two lenders, and you basically viewed them as different because they have different types of products. How would you
Right.
coach a loan officer not to be offended by the fact that they're not the only one?
I just tell them up front, right? I mean, I do the same thing. I have a couple title companies, and I have a couple lending options, and I just say, listen, I'm going to also send them here, right? And they know each other, and they know that they're going up against each other. I want to see if there's a non-traditional lending option. I want to see what the traditional lending option will have. And a lot of the times what's helpful is one of my lenders introduced me within his world to somebody that he refers to, right? So if there's somebody in your kind of sphere that maybe offers a product that you don't offer, that you don't directly compete with, showing your real estate contact, listen, I also trust this person, goes a long way for that trust relationship with the agent.
Yeah, that's kind of huge. I love that. So even though they're quote unquote competing, they're really not, because they're offering alternate products.
Yeah, and also what I think so. This one of the lenders that I use often, he likes to say when he talks to my clients, look, I'm not the cheapest option, but I'm also not the most expensive option, which I think is but he says like it's a brilliant pitch because he knows exactly where his fees are. He knows exactly where he's going to land compared to some of like the rate shoppers online and that type of stuff. But he's really just up front. And so I back him up by saying, like, look, I know his service is unparalleled. I know that if you work with Justin, like, you're going to get this level of service and it's going to be great. And so, and his fees are up front. Like, you're not going to get blindsided at the end with some of the online lenders that you might be experiencing. So that's, just knowing his company and knowing his model, and then him also being very transparent to my clients is really helpful. And he doesn't care if people don't use them. That's another part too. It's like, just know that some people just aren't going to use you.
Well, I think that's a great script because it's going to get rid of, I mean, we do know that depends on the statistic, between 1 in 6 and between 1 in 10 people who just truly are going to shop the heck out of you because they want to, they're going to drive the extra 5 miles to save 2 cents on a gallon of gas.
Yep.
And I do think that that's a great filter up front, because if that person knows it and they're like, oh, I have to have the absolute best deal, I hate to break it to y'all, none of you have the best deal. There's always someone out there somewhere else who's willing to drop their price or run a lower comp plan to steal your loan. And so I think that that's certainly, I saw a loan officer in their background said best rates. And I was like, all right, well, I don't think that's even legal, number one, to have as a thing. I don't know, Ken Perry's probably not watching this, but maybe he'll watch the recording. But I think ultimately that's a great help. One of the things you said earlier was that you don't mind if your loan officer calls you and says, hey, do you have anyone I can talk to, any people? Which when you said that, I was like, well, wait a second. I've always felt like if I call up even a partner that's worked with us in the past and said, hey, do you have any people we can pre-qualify? I always felt like I was kind of being a sales shark, but you're okay with that. So thank you for that sharpening.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Proactive is always great. And I think, and then just reaching out and saying, listen, if you have anybody that is kind of heated back up, because right now, if from a market standpoint where we are, we're starting to see a little bit more activity. We're starting to see people just out of necessity, not because of rates, but because life happens. People are moving and having babies and getting divorced and all this type of stuff. So people are still going to be doing real estate. And so, it's important to have some proactive touch with your agents and say, hey, listen, I bet you're a bit like some of the other agents I've been talking to, and you're getting some people that are getting off the fence and starting to actively look. Of those people that are actively looking, is there anybody that could be helped by a current rate sheet? And it's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I have 3 people here, their emails. Like, if my lender contacted me today and asked me that, I would have at least 3 people that I'd say, yeah, reach out to these people. They would probably be helpful.
I think that's great. That's the third kind of confirmation I've had of that. So again, think about this, folks. If you haven't looked back at your pipeline of people that you've pre-qualified since 2021, right? Actually go back a couple of years. I was talking to a couple of loan officers who said they literally had a client who was given to them as a lead in 2021 and never applied, who just applied without them even having a conversation. But apparently the realtor had said, oh yeah, make sure that you reach out to him again. And then I had some realtors kind of saying something similar to that. And so that was a great opportunity. If you're watching the video, rewind that, write that down so you can have that conversation with your real estate partners. But just think about your own database, because then you can hopefully activate some old leads for a referral partner, or that don't have a realtor attached to them, that you can refer to one of your great referral partners as well. So great point. Any other blind spots out there that you think loan officers have right now?
I think some of the things that people need to be aware of as loan officers is that this market is really obviously hit hard on some really top producing people, some people that had some really strong business, but the people that are going to continue to do business in the market are the people that are constantly grinding and constantly working at their leads and at their sphere. And so I would be reaching out to them and just seeing how they're doing, honestly. Like, sometimes it's okay just to pick up the phone and just have a conversation with them that's not real estate based, right? Go back to some of the personal touches, the personal details that you have. See that they went on vacation to Disney for a week, and call them and ask them how it went, and ask them about some of the tips and tricks that they have of going to Disney in the middle of summer, which is the answer is don't, because it's too hot. I just did it. But, but maybe have 1 or 2 soft touch conversations that are not lending related, and just check in with them and see how they're doing. It's that kind of a joke where it's like, check in on your real estate agent. How's your real estate agent doing? But it's kind of serious too. I mean, Tom Ferry released that stat that 60,000 people have left the industry. something crazy like that this year alone, how many of those agents that were your people that you were working with are part of that 60,000? When was the last time you checked in on them? I think that would be something to be really important as loan officers, is check in on your real estate agents and see how they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's tremendous advice. I talked to a gentleman who runs one of the largest teams here in Arizona, if not the largest, and he said that he said they're not losing agents to other teams, they're losing agents to W-2 jobs. And if there's nothing harder, I think, as a decision for your agent to make than to give up on their dream of real estate to go back to a job. And so I think that there's some encouragement there. A lot of I've made it a standard for myself to call and talk to 50 realtors a week. And I'm not even doing loans. And I would say that was the interesting part. Was I went back to realtors who had referred my team loans back to 2020. And some hadn't referred us a loan since, most thankfully had, but it was interesting to hear what they were doing, what's changed, and how surprised and actually excited they were to talk to me. And so I would just encourage you all that there's so many people out there who would love to hear from you, and you're not having enough of those conversations. One of the other things that you said was to be prepared. And I think that one of the pieces that's continually come up over the last 60 days in my world has been the lack of role play on the lending side versus you realtors. You realtors role play all the freaking time. And so how would you encourage, what would be your encouraging thoughts to loan officers on maybe how to build in role play for themselves, but also maybe some role play with their partners so that they would have better scripts of things like how to refer them, that kind of thing?
So I think it'd be really simple. So I do this to agents that I coach. I would say, take the next 30 days and don't role play, but identify the conversations that you're having over the next 30 days and see what goes on repeat. See what conversations, interactions that you're having on a repeat basis, and then go back and workshop those and see, like, okay, so I had 10, how's the market doing? 8, how's your business going? Like all that type of stuff. And then you start seeing, okay, like I need to work on my answers here. I need to work on my answers here. And then compare notes against, 4 or 5 other people in your office, and then start having those role play conversations. Now, the thing that I would tell everybody on this call, anyone that's watching this video, is to get into those certifications with Todd and Deborah, because there's no better tool for communication in any industry than exactly what to say. And one of the things we talk about as guides, and as Phil discusses with exactly what to say, is that we're just Tabasco, right? We're just a condiment on the table. We're not the entree. We're not the appetizer. We're not the dessert. This is something that fits into anything. Ninja Cell, anything that you're doing, Atomic Habits, any of this stuff that you're doing within your world. Win by Noon. I mean, that's why Todd is such a brilliant partner within exactly what to say, is to take such a great resource and marry those two things together. You have to get into exactly what to say. It's going to help you in every aspect of your life, but it'll help you professionally. And that's why we're all here on this video. So I would challenge you all to do that. It's not hard to do. It's an easy investment, and it'll change how you operate.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was a game changer for me, right? To sit in a room, and when I did it, there was 4 of us in the lending world, and there was the rest of the 15 people were out of the real estate world. It was a lot of fun because they were as excited to help us role play our conversations as we were to help them role play theirs. And I think anytime you can immerse yourself for 2 full days with one primary goal, which is to communicate better, to be better prepared, was just a huge eye opener. And I was like, man, I had gotten the book before. I had started to read the book before, and I was like, dang, too bad I didn't. Like, what if I just lost a lot of time? So now I've accelerated that, and I'm looking forward to helping you all accelerate it as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the we're not getting any questions other than the example of the one sheeter. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said one sheeter. Just information that you have on a daily basis. Just make sure you have stuff ready to go for info that's succinct. But since we don't have a question asked, I would challenge you to ask yourself a question: is who are people in your world that you haven't asked enough questions of? Who are people in your sphere that could be potential opportunities for future business that you're not contacting enough? I think that's where you need to start, like, kind of reassessing your business And that goes back to checking them with your real estate agent contacts and that type of stuff. But, also some lofty goals, like who are some people what are teams and groups that you wish that you would break into? And like, what are you doing to try to break into those conversations? Because, as real estate agents, we usually try to be the go-to person. But the good thing is from a lending side is that agents can have 4 or 5 lenders in their back pocket. So there's probably space in those groups and those teams that you could probably play into and just kind of have some piece of their business. So I would challenge you all to think about that.
Yeah, and I can think of countless times in my own experience, as well as from, people that I've coached or just are good friends in the business, where they came in as the number 4 or 5 lender and worked their way up to be the number 1 lender. And I feel like oftentimes we're not open-minded to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's an opportunity. And it was interesting because just since my sphere of realtors in Arizona know that I'm involved with exactly what to say. And because of the fact there's exactly what to say for real estate, and a lot of them have heard about it or they've read it, they've reached out to me to help sharpen them. Would you come in and talk to my team? I mean, like the biggest team in town has asked me to do that. And I'm not even, my team's not their preferred lender, and never will be, but it's an opportunity. I shouldn't say never will be. It's an opportunity to maybe someday, have a seat at that table. And so these are just opportunities for you if you're open-minded to it. And then the other place where I'll kind of sum it up is that for me personally, I've got adult children now. I'm, old, I got gray hair, Kevin doesn't have that yet. And what I have found is, as your kids sometimes develop opinions. And so I've been able to actually have some deeper, better conversations by using some of these phrases that I've learned through exactly what to say and through Phil, and really through the conversations I've had with you, Kevin, and other guys, which has really been, a lot of fun for me. When you go to that link that Paul posted, it's just that it's off of my toddbookspan.me, but I think there's one that's a Linktree, link that it goes to for exactly what to say. It also has a sign up for the 31-day challenge, which is another great opportunity for free for you to sign up and be thinking more over the next month about that. And it's something that Phil is very passionate about. And we as guides certainly would encourage you to consider, since it's free.
Yeah. We kind of, when we connected in New York and we got to know each other a little bit more, I think, we do have a question here. So just quick, how did you start to use exactly what to say in your professional personal life and not feel clumsy? Do you have a few favorite reads at the moment? So I would just say this, it's just, you got to practice it. I mean, you're creating a muscle, you're rewiring your brain. So it's going to be something that is going to feel clumsy at first. I always talk about, it feels like you're wearing a wire and you're in the middle of a drug bust, and you say like, what makes you say that? And like, there's a guy in a van outside that's like, we got to go in, he's in trouble. So it's going to feel like that at first, but eventually you're going to get into a place where you're going to say the phrases at the exact right time, with the exact right tone, with the exact right intentionality. And that just comes with practice. In terms of reads right now, I'm honestly just I'm reading fiction right now. I read too much nonfiction lately, so I don't have anything good. I don't know if you have a recommendation to close out, but
I would say 2 things, right? So yeah, it's funny. I read fiction at night, nonfiction during the day. I'm going back to some oldies but goodies. There's a great book on thinking time called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. That's what I'm currently listening to. And then I actually have 2 different phones, and on my other phone on Audible, I'm listening to exactly what to say. So if I'm sitting somewhere and I've only got 5 minutes, I'm like, let me just listen to a couple things that Phil says. But for me, the way that I've gotten better at it is I pick one phrase at a time. Now, someone else told me I pick 5 a week. I picked 1 for a week. So I literally wrote in my planner. You may not be a planner guy, or gal, but get a piece of paper, and I literally put on there, I'm not sure if it's for you, and I wrote it down in the morning. And then I sat there in front of me, and as I challenged myself to use it in every single conversation that I had, and I did it for a full week. And then I said, okay, great. Would you be open-minded to, how open-minded are you to? And then I wound that in for the next week. And so for me, that's how I've gotten better at it, because I'm sitting here today and Kevin's like whipping out all the phrases, and I'm like, I'm not to that one yet, darn it. But I'm going to get there. Right. So that's what I would encourage for all of you. And I think trying to think if there's any other book that I think that's where I would start. I would just find something. For me, I think it's most of the time you don't need a new book. There's probably a great book that you read that you didn't execute or integrate any of what you learned into your life, and that go back and do that. That's why I'm reading the book on Thinking Time, The Road Less Stupid. All right, we hit that magic hour. It flew by. Again, I would encourage you all, if you're really looking, I love the fact that coaching has been a critical part of my success. And what I have found is that having a coach who knows mortgage was good, but having a coach who knows something more about what it is that I want to know more about, AKA real estate, could possibly be better for you. So if you are looking for a little inspiration, a little different point of view, I'd encourage you to follow and reach out to Kevin. And any other last thing, Kevin, that you wanted to throw out there before we let you go get on with your life?
No, I appreciate being here, and I appreciate the conversation. I would just challenge yourselves to be better every day. Don't put on too much of a burden. I think as you're trying to figure out how to reset communication and elevate relationships with people in the real estate space, is give yourself some space and grace, and figure out different ways to do it, and keep track of how you're being successful, but also be very cognizant of what you could do to be better. And like Todd said, if anybody wants to reach out, I'd love to talk to anybody one-on-one and help where I can. So I appreciate being here. It's awesome to connect on this level, and I look forward to it, man.
Well, I appreciate getting to know you more. I appreciate getting to spend time with you. And most importantly, I'm glad that now our community knows who you are. So on behalf of Dave, the whole crew at Trust Engine, Deborah and the team over at Plug and Play SM, and myself and my team at Win by Noon, thank you for being here and listening, whether you watch this live or on the recording. Grateful for you. Now just go out there and execute. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.